Go.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the June 13th, 2017 edition of YouTube Auto Builders Fine Scale Live Build. We've got Miles Hale with us already. Ralph Rizzetti trying to join right now, although Google may not be as forgiving as we would like with technical issues occasionally. We are short a Barry this month. He's out for June getting married, so congratulations to him. We'll see him back the next show. We also have a special guest this time, Nick Masney from Imagine That Laser Art. So hopefully Ralph can get through the issues and get joined in to talk to us as well, because both Ralph and I are building a kit from him right now, and we're very happy, very pleased to have Nick with us this month. So thanks everybody for joining us as we get started, and we'll give it back to Johnny to for the promotionals.
All right, Andy. I just want to quit laughing. You're making me laugh. Uh, Once they go to YouTubeMallBuilders.com, there you can check the schedules for the live shows, the Tuesday, Wednesday, and the Saturday live show. Tuesday and Wednesdays are at 8 o'clock Central, 9 o'clock Eastern Time. Thursday and Saturday show is 9 o'clock Central, 10 o'clock Eastern Time. Also, be sure and click on the eMag while you're at the website. Sign up for email notifications. That way when the eMag comes out, you'll be notified. JD and his team do a great job on the magazine. And the two really good things about the magazine, besides the articles in there, is the fact that it's ad-free and the magazine is free. So you can't miss out on that. Also, can I give you a rundown? This week we've got the live show coming up Saturday. That'll be at 9 o'clock Central, 10 o'clock Eastern Time. I'll be hosting that show along with Big Bill. Well, I'll IT it. Big Bill will host it. And he's got a guest I think everybody's going to be really interested in. He never told me I could say anything about who it was, so I'm going to leave it as a surprise. But I know a lot of people are subscribed to him and like to watch his videos. So with that said, I'm going to turn it back over to, well, whatever his name was, Andy.
That guy.
There you go, Andy.
I get you mixed up every month, so now I'm going to have to start taking it as a personal challenge to find something different to say to you every month so I can get you a chuckle. Should have Ralph with us in just a minute, because I know both Ralph's met Nick before. This will be so to everybody who's in our Q&A, and as people join, we'll talk. This is more of a discussion as opposed to a more typical interview.
Andy sent Ralph. No, never mind. He got it.
I got it. Yep.
He's in.
And we're also joined by Ralph Rizzetti. So,
unbelievable. The link went to my trash can.
well, this is Google. It's not
Not
you got to remember it's free, not perfect. All right. So this will be more of a discussion. So anybody joining us on the Q&A, any questions that you've got for a manufacturer in the hobby, you know, what their take on some of this stuff is. But he's also a modeler, and I've had a chance to take a look at his layout. Hopefully he'll share some pictures with us about that too. He's quite a very good modeler as well. His layout's quite good. So thanks for joining us, Nick. And we'll just kind of my thinking is that we'll kind of on it off and talk, do some modeling and chat along with you some. That'll give people a chance to kind of develop some questions or to ask you some questions as we go on about, trying to get some structures done as well. So,
thanks, Andy, to be here.
I've enjoyed talking to you a few times today. I have to say that Nick's been got kind of a quite, or at least my impression is that it's a quite unique take on how to be a manufacturer in this hobby to some degree. So, so why? And I asked you that in a kind of sarcastic way in the email when we talked about that once before, but I think that's one of the best ways to ask this question, is to just let the sarcasm bleed through. Why on earth would you want to be a manufacturer in a space that has such the challenges that our that our the marketplace of our hobby presents?
Yeah, that's a great question, Andy. I know, and we chuckled about that one before. I'm not doing it to get rich. I can tell you that. Uh, it's more an extension of my hobby, I think. And it was, and you just touched on it, a challenge. And from a little bit of my background as a modeler, and as an engineer and in the automotive industry that I work in, it kind of I like to do things hands on, and getting into the laser cutting and structure building manufacturing realm kind of gives me that outlet, that challenge that I'm looking for. And as time goes on, I learn, I grow, I improve. And I can continue to hear my wife and business partner in the background asking me, why are we doing this again? But in the end, there's a lot of satisfaction, and Ralph would probably second that notion too. And you realize that when you can deliver something that you're proud of and that people can enjoy, that's the satisfaction, I think, that I'm enjoying in this business right now.
Right. That's what, as we had talked about, I kind of got that sense from you that you see it the way a lot of us who participate in the hobby outside of our own self interest in the hobby from any perspective is that there is in any portion of it, there's a little bit of a give back or a contribute to the hobby and the community in some way, even if there still has to be a profit motive to make it sustainable even. So and I got that sense from you every time I talked to you for the first time, which was part of the reason I was so excited to get you on and talk to you, that I seen you as a genuine real modeler. Well, let's cover some of that stuff, and that'll help develop some of the questions in the community too. So, as a modeler, the basic questions, some of those are just not as interesting. They're in every interview, but they're not as necessarily interesting as how long you've been in the hobby, what your interests are. What do that's, I think, the more interesting question than, what year did your dad buy you a train set or something. That
Yeah, yeah.
I think the more interesting question is, what sparked your interest in going down this path as a modeler in general?
Well, that's great. Great question again. And I started, probably as you guys did. I started as a young kid, way back. Maybe I was 8 or 9 years old, and started with that first train set. I can still remember it from the Sears Wish Book catalog back in the day. But then, it grew. I grabbed the magazines, and I followed the Lynn Westcott layout building book, and I built a few of those, and it kind of grew over time. And then it just kind of waned as I went away to school and had other interests, as we all do, and then kind of came back as I got into my married life. Luckily, with an understanding wife that Renee is, I was able to dive deep into the hobby before we had our two boys, and that's probably where I probably gained the majority of my traction during those years that I was able to kind of focus on what I wanted to build, and maybe I'll show you a few pictures of the layout that I was able to build at least before I got into this business. Things have slowed down since, but that's another story. But to your point and to your question, growth as I evolved in the hobby itself, and I was I was kind of interested in an obscure railway, and it's called the Algoma Central Railway. It existed from Sault Ste. Marie up to Hearst, Ontario. Started in the early 1900s, and it was taken over by CN in I think it was in the late 80s, early 90s. But it was in itself a challenging enterprise, trying to move iron ore and forest products to market and things like that. So that whole challenge of trying to make something that you can't just go and buy from the Walthers catalog kind of drove my interest and kind of fueled my desire to model. And long story short, I had an opportunity through a friend of mine in Windsor. His name is Joe LeMay, and introduced me to a gentleman named Mark Williams and his wife Laura Williams, who were running this company called Imagine That Laser Art. And they were moving into a different realm of the business, where they were doing a lot of custom work for larger clients, larger scale clients. and they wanted to move the production part of the business off. And so they offered it to me, and I had a look at it, and I thought, this is something I've always wanted to try from a manufacturing perspective, and I saw that as a challenge, and I'm really glad that I took that challenge now. It has been a long journey, been about 5.5 years now. And honestly, I've grown and learned, and I think we've provided some really neat products to the customer base, which you guys are hopefully enjoying right now. And I continue to want to add to that and continue to deliver unique product to modelers like us, like all of us, right? So that's my goal.
I can tell you from a personal point of view that I'm glad you took on the job of Imagine That Laser Art. It's a great models so far that I've seen.
Oh, good stuff. Thank you.
I think it looks like, I mean, even looking at the legacy of it, some of the original products versus, you've had even the stuff that predated you is just incredible product. They had a really good offering, a good catalog, but some of the unique things that, we may jump around some in how we talk about this because that's kind of how my mind works is kind of darts around. Is one of these, there's kind of a unique thing about your kits that I've already talked about on one of the previous shows, but getting kind of the first hand take on it. That was so impressive to me when I first found your website and started looking at those. I never built a kit that I follow the instructions very well. I don't know if I'm just fairly typical man in that way, that I don't care a lot about instructions, or I don't respect them necessarily a lot of times, and I just build how I want to. But something that was so unique is that, it even displayed on your website, is that there's a kit and it's got 3 or 4 different iterations planned and designed into it, and it seems like none of those iterations that I would naturally do require me to take a hacksaw to the kit. So
Right.
That thinking is quite unique. What got you there?
Great. I appreciate you recognizing that too. And that's something that we wanted to try to utilize as an opportunity to differentiate ourselves among some of the other modelers, the other manufacturers out there. Well, we had, we work with a gentleman named Dave Ross. Dave is our custom builder, and he's very much an inspiration for us too. So together we collaborate on these ideas. And in a lot of cases, we look at the model and we try to understand from a customer's perspective, how would you use the model? So I'll just reach out and grab one as an example. So here's one of my newest kits. This is Olympia Tool and Die, and you can kind of see the shape of that building. It's unique. It's kind of a unique footprint. Some people might use it in a city block or what have you. And we thought that there's probably, thinking of the DPM line with the modular wall sections and all that, we looked at opportunities to reconfigure some of this stuff. So not everybody's going to have room or a place to put that kind of a structure. So what we did was we looked at an opportunity to standardize the wall sections and to was consistent so that they could go together any sort of order that you wanted them to go in. So there's that same kit as built as a full flat. Okay, so the same kit again.
I don't have any mics on.
Yeah, okay, no problem. So here's the same kit again, different configuration. Again, gives the modeler a lot of flexibility, right? And that's kind of what we wanted to provide was opportunity for any of us to be able to fit the space that you have and be able to envision and execute the model that you had in mind. I'll give you a small example. There's a guy, here's a custom build that's going to be delivered to one of our clients nearby here in Ontario. He had this memory of National Grocers as a kid up in Owen Sound, Ontario, and he wanted this building to look like that memory that he had. So here it is in that configuration, lettered for National Grocers. as an example. So it's about trying to fit the flexibility of, you know, all of us in our thinking and how we need to apply a certain structure to our layouts.
Well, that's something I wanted to kind of draw into, even in aspects of everything we're building in this show, the various kits we will do, is that if you're building a kit for the sake of building a kit, that's wonderful. You could just build that kit exactly in a certain way. Or even for a dedicated diorama, the diorama can flex to the structure. However, for most of us that are building a layout, we are in constrained spaces and we're sacrificing structure dimensions for track work arrangements and various other, or what other structures are in the space. So often we have to manipulate our structures to fit on the layout where they need to. And that pretty much always means drifting away from the instructions massively to the point that I basically consider, when I buy a structure kit, I basically consider them as a box of parts, and I figure out how I need to put them together. Whereas it seems with a lot of the kits that you have some variant of that structure design that will fit from a building flat to a quite large square structure, et cetera, et cetera. I was really impressed with that from the beginning, and I have not seen any other manufacturer with that approach in any capacity. So,
good to hear. Thanks, Andy. Yeah, that's again something that we thought is an advantage to the customer, to all of us as modelers, and hopefully we can continue down that path.
yeah, AJ had mentioned something about the L structures. I guess he was taking a look at the elevated trackwork sections. I can't remember how I initially found your products, whatever, but I was quite impressed to see that, because that's a unique offering in anything that's close to fine scale. I mean, it's unique is the only way to describe that. I mean, you could there are some plastic kits that approximate some of that stuff, but it's just not craftsman quality or something. That was something of the original product line?
Yeah, so it was part of the original company, and yeah, we have continued to carry it forth, and I am making a little bit of tweaks here and there to it to change a few things and make it hopefully a little more realistic in a couple areas, like a new station kit here and there and things like that. So it's still popular. There's a lot of guys out of the Chicago area, obviously out of Illinois, and a lot up the eastern seaboard that seem to love the L. So we're still moving quite a bit of it.
Well, of course. I mean, anytime you have something that's like that, and as a small business owner, I approach some of the things in my business, which is not modeling. But as a small business owner, you probably have the right approach, not try to get rich. I don't think any small business owner probably gets too wealthy anyway. It's just the fight. And I also do a little manufacturing, and it is mostly for the challenge as opposed to, or the satisfaction, as opposed to it being the best way to get to, get to a Maserati. It's probably not the best way to get there. Well, let's take a look at some other things, catch up with some of the other guys, and then we'll circle back as some guys have some more questions. And I definitely want to, in a few minutes, when we need some time to let some glue dry and stuff on some of the stuff we're working on, I definitely want to take a look at a few of those things behind you in a little better detail, which I know the pictures on the website are quite good, but that hotel kit you've got, I just haven't placed an order for it yet. I come really close to, me and you talked by email about that, I come really close to doing that one. For this iteration, although it's not an industrial structure, it didn't fit with what Miles and Ralph and Barry and the guys were doing. So I went with the structure that I'm incredibly happy to be building too. But I'm just there's that structure I'm kind of in love with, so I definitely want to get a closer look at it. But so let's.
I'll get him to pull the trigger. Don't worry.
Oh, Ralph. Me and Ralph are always battling back and forth over stuff, but.
So I have a question. What made here? I'm going to turn this down. What made you go from the finger joints to the tab?
Okay, good question, Ralph. Well, in all honesty, it goes back to efficiency and laser time. And it takes an incredible amount of laser time to cut those small finger joints. And a lot of them were not coming off the laser cleanly. And I think I can see a couple of yours might have been broken off too.
Yep.
I wasn't too happy with that as also as a finished product. And I know what Mark had intended to work with bricks, and it's still a valuable idea. But I think on a large building, it's a little tough to pull that off cleanly without breaking some of those tabs. So that's why I went to the larger 1-inch tongue and groove with the cornice cap on top.
What do they call
A
it?
lot more efficient.
Pilaster.
Pilaster.
Is that what they call a pilaster?
That's correct, Ralph.
Okay.
Huh, that's kind of interesting. I hadn't thought about the difference in those. These work so well. Normally, with most of the kits that I have, and actually, the first kit that we did on here was a BTS kit, which I think they make really good stuff for the price, especially. I like the BTS kit, but one of the things that I do and that I showed on the first kit is I normally cut the tabs off, and I glue a piece of 16th square stock bass or something onto one side of it, cut it, shape it, glue the other one on, and make a quarter post. A lot of that has to do with the way wood siding should be done, where the trim strip should be set back into the siding and the siding cut and caulked to it on a prototype structure. I normally cut the tabs off. On this structure, I didn't, because, well, there's a few reasons why. One, it's not appropriate for I needed those brick pilasters to be there, and there's no reason to build those back up. I just covered the tab slot. But I hadn't thought that much about it. When I built it, I just put it together. Whereas nearly every other tab and slot construction I've ever built, I had to file the tabs to get those to the correct size and to get the alignment right. And do just lock in quite well. So for whatever reasons drove you to it, it's a pretty it's a working model.
Yeah, good to hear. Good to hear. I think it's a pretty robust solution, and you know, I've held these parts up before. I don't know if you can see these or not, Johnny, if this works or not, but you can kind of see that whole theory about how these parts go together, and then, you know, you're 90 like that, and then the cornice, or sorry, the pilaster over top. That, to me, that gives you a real rock solid joint.
Yep.
And all you got to do is just kind of hold that, let that glue dry, or clamp it, let the glue dry, and that thing is going to be like a rock. I thought that was probably the most repeatable solution that I can offer to the customers. And my goal, obviously, was to give you guys something that you're satisfied and you can build and you won't be frustrated with. That was what I was trying to achieve in that solution.
But it also lets you pitch each of your part in multiple directions as well. So it could be an inside quarter, a flat component, like I've built my wall in a flat section so far. But it's easy to build the outside quarter as well, as opposed to, in a lot of cases, having to sand into a 90-degree or to make stacked parts. Brick is normally a problem in a lot of styrene structures because you can't sand the surfaces to good without damaging them. That's the thing that most people, if you go watch any of the YouTube videos about a DPM or any of those styrene structures, is watch where the brick's at. So you could, these are the parts you could sand, et cetera, et cetera. So, and Ralph, you've come along really well. You're getting done between shows, brother. That's not giving us a chance to go very much, but I'll catch us up then, I guess.
I have to go ahead of you, Andy, because I can't stand it.
I know I'm bad for that too, but I've tried to slow down this time around.
Okay, but I have one little complaint, and hopefully you can correct it. This, I forget what you call this. Corbelling along the top?
It's the cornice.
Okay, the cornice. Once you put your pilaster on, it's not long enough to go right to the ends.
Okay.
So I had to add the thickness of 3 pieces of pilaster to bring it to the outside edge.
Okay. Can you hold the side up for me there, Ralph, just quickly to show? Let me see what you've done on the side. Okay.
See, I did mine differently. I cut mine, which I glued it on because of that. I cut a 45 in mine once I made it up, and I'm going to wrap it and go right around the end of the building with it.
Right. Okay. I see what you're doing. Yep. No problem. I can accommodate that.
I don't know whether how it was meant to fit. It doesn't. It wasn't really explained in the instructions. It shows you where to put it, tells you how to do it, but I I wasn't sure whether this should have been all brick because that was maybe to go up on top. I did it like this.
Yeah, absolutely, Ralph. And there's a bunch of ways you can do it. And we kind of left it up to the modeler to do what he thought was right. But maybe I got to explain it a bit better, and that's easy to do. That first course of cornice was supposed to go, or is supposed to go between the pilasters.
Okay.
So it would be that. So the pilaster layer plus the first course of cornice should all be at the same level. I can't
There.
tell. Yes, I can't
So,
quite on your image there.
they were actually too long then.
Yeah, they were to be trimmed down. Yeah,
Okay.
but that's
Okay.
that's no problem. I can clarify that in the instructions though. But thanks. That's I don't mind that at all. You know, that's the kind of feedback that I like to hear, and then I can make some improvements.
Maybe I used the wrong term. It wasn't a complaint. It's feedback. There you go.
All right.
But I might should do mine a little different too, because I built my assembly up with multiple pieces to make a length of it, the building length, with a 3 stack for that corbel. And I cut each piece back and overlapped them so that the joints aren't together, and then cut them so that the cut aligned with where the brickwork should have gaps. So when I fill it with border detail, and then made a piece up, cut a 45 on it. But I didn't leave the capability for the pilaster so the corbel sets right on top of my the pilaster, sits right on top of it, pilaster.
Okay.
So that's two quite different ways to get there, neither of which are exactly perfect.
I'm just making it here as you guys are talking. Yeah, it's good observation.
You might want to make some notes too. Everybody's got their own way of doing things, right?
Yeah.
This is the first time I've done a wood kit. Was Andy drove me into it, and we talked about which was the best, so I steered him towards Imagine That because I had this kit, and then he went out and got I forget which one he's got, but anyway, it doesn't matter. In the instructions, they mentioned putting a brick every so often, a different color, right? And I started to do it with paint, and I thought there's got to be an easier way. And what I ended up doing on both walls, I used a pencil.
Okay.
And I put it on before I put any color. So I colored a brick here and there with a pencil. So now it's got the graphite color. And then I put my color on, which was a combination of a craft paint and artist ink that I used an airbrush with.
Nice.
And that's how I got my colors.
That's good stuff.
I also used the Hunter line stains. I used the driftwood to start with.
Now, I've used the Hunter line stain over top of my sub to get some variety in the color once it was painted, but I sprayed it with a primer coat of the light brown so I could warm up the brick color a little bit, seal in the wood that I used. But we did that on a previous show, and then I did a couple different colors using a sponge to apply it, and then come back with a Vallejo, just some kind of Vallejo paint on a toothpick to pick out a few bricks here and there. Of course, Miles basically cheats, so he prints the brick structure, so he doesn't have to go through 3 days of painting to get these colors like this. I want to see some of that you're working on too.
Bigger scale, doesn't he?
Excuse me, could we define cheat?
Well, okay, so in modeling, cheating is one of the best compliments you can tell someone. If you say, hey, you stole that idea, well, of course I did, repeated it. But if Picasso says that's the way to do it, as an artist, how do you argue with that? So one of the best compliments you could say is that you stole it or cheated. That's what great artists do. So let me give credit in the chats for to North Star Railroad lines. Dwight got me tickled pretty good a minute ago. Remember, I'm from Kentucky, so so picking on me and challenging me with the Oxford Dictionary, I'll take the challenge, and I constantly will strive for improvement. But like Miles likes to predicate everything. Look up predicate in Oxford Dictionary, by the way. Anyway, likes to predicate everything with he's a PE teacher. When it comes to language, I challenge myself, but I'm also challenged with a life of experience in Kentucky, where predicate is not oftenly used as a word, polished or either. So let's check some of that stuff out, Miles. Since I'm calling you a cheater, prove it to us. I know you're well set up to do it, but I'm fascinated by
The first,
paper and printing anyway on this.
the first explanation in the cheat definition is if you go to a larger scale, it's easier.
That's right. And harder.
Yes, it's a balance of things. There's things that are easier, things that are harder.
Well, as I go bigger, I must put detail in, or as we talked about before we went on air, you can take a Craftsman kit, a very high-end $400 kit, and if you build it very poorly, it's going to look like a Bachman Shake the Box. The same theory applies as we get to the bigger scales. If I'm doing O scale, which I am, and I don't put the corbels on or the decorations correctly or whatever, that if I put half as many on, the human eye sees, the brain perceives things that are right and things that don't look right. And so you've got to put detail in. And I always quote Joe Puccio. I don't know where Joe is, bless his heart. He may be still alive. He may have passed away. I have no idea. But he had some axioms. And Joe Puccio's first axiom was Mother Nature weathers to neutral gray. Great observation. She does. His other observation, which was more in tune with the modelers and those of us that build models for contest and for reality, is that you must have the chuckies and the pricklies. You need the chunkies and the pricklies. And what he was saying was, you need the mass of that beautiful building that Ralph has laying down there, but you also need the pricklies of the fans, the mullions the right size, the interior that's inside those doors. That makes the judge or the person who's doing your railroad look at it. The mass brings his eye to it. But then you want to hold his eye with the details. So it's the downspouts and the fans in the window. Maybe they're animated, maybe they're not, but you need the bars on the window over there on the left side. You need that kind of stuff to hold his attention so he'll look more and more deeply into your model. Just a flat brick wall, they look at it and they say, oh, that's a big brick wall, and they walk off. You know, but if it's got all the kinds of detail that Raffles got in there, which I assume is what Nick put in the kit, but nonetheless, it's holding the attention. It's making people look at that model. It's making appreciation of the fact that that model was put together. As I get much bigger, I have to put more and more of that detail in to try and hold the detail. If I don't have fire escapes on the back of my building, and I do, I use Titchy's fire escapes because they're absolutely fantastic, but you've got to put fire escapes on there. You've got to put lights. You've got to put details. You've got to put more than just the mass of the building. You need the details to make people look at it. So anyway, that's my take on making people look at fine scale models.
Pretty good take. Pretty good take.
And I think Joe was very observant. This is back in the 70s when we were first starting to model. And for him to come up with the chuckies and the pricklies, I thought was pretty good, you know. So he never, Joe, bless his heart, never finished a model, but he was a great observer of modeling. Anyway, nonetheless, so I'm set up on the screen. Those of you that can see, I've done this, and I'm experimenting on this show. This is live. I do not normally use Adobe Photoshop Elements. This happens to be, I believe, number 11, iteration 11, whatever you want to call it. And so I'm kind of attempting to show you that for, I think it's less than $100. You can buy this program. It does not need to have a subscription from Adobe. You buy it once, you got it, you can do whatever with it. So what I have already done here is I took up this PSD photograph that I have here. Simply means that it's from Photoshop. I don't really want it that way. That's my raw file. I've already converted it to a TIFF. So I'm going to work it. I usually like to work in TIFF. The TIFF is better than JPEG. It doesn't diminish. It doesn't compress. It's just better all the way around. I photographed this building out in western Kansas. Didn't have anything up on top of it, which I really thought was good. Didn't have anything really on the side of it over here. The bricks kind of faded, but nonetheless, it's a good building for candidate for modeling and doing something with. The first thing that I do is I come over here on the side. Let's get a pointer tool. Normally I work in Photoshop 3. That's the latest Photoshop I have, and I'd use it because I don't have to pay a subscription for it. I bought it probably 25 years ago, and I've never had to do anything with it. Johnny was asking me to expand, so I'm going to come up here. I'm going to grab this window tool that's over on the left, and I'm going to drag across that and magnify that so you can see it a little bit better, hopefully. Come on. Do your thing. And it's not, oh, here. So I do this first. There we go. Now you should be able to see it a little bit better. What I've done is I've brought some lines. If I grab these rulers over on the side with my pointer tool, it will bring these blue lines in. And I can do the same thing from the top. And what I try and do is I'll pick a corner like this top left. If that's my corner, then I'm going to pick another blue line then off of the bottom left. And if I've picked the top, which I did, I'm going to pick the top to bring in this other side line. And now I want to make it square. Well, it's pretty square over here on the right side. It's pretty square across the top. It's not bad across the bottom. But this corner down here shows some black. It's not square. So what I want to do is make sure I've highlighted, highlighted this frame. I did that over here on the far right side. So now this is the highlighted piece. I'm going to go up here to layer, and I'm going to simplify it. I don't know why, but this particular program wants the layer simplified. So we've simplified it. And now I'm going to come in and I'm going to do an edit, and hopefully select the right thing. Bear with me. I may have to do something else here. There we go. Transform. I want to transform it. I want to do a free transformation. That will give me these, I think, 8 handles around the side. I don't know why, but this version of Photoshop does not allow me to work with the tops, but I can work with the bottom. And that's the one I want anyway, because this corner of the building is out. So I can grab that corner. Oops, we got to do one thing. I got to tell it down here to skew. I'm in the bottom left corner. I'm going to highlight that skew, and that will allow me to grab that little peg and look at that. I pull it out a little bit, and I'm square all the way up and down that side. So that's complete. I can hit enter, and that's done. On a Mac, I can hit Command and D, and that's deselect. That gets rid of everything out here. So hopefully now I'm good. Now, the one thing I don't like are these drains. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and I'm going to grab a clone tool. Actually, just so you can see it better, I'll do this. I'm going to highlight this. Okay, I'm going to grab the clone tool. On a Mac, now let's shrink it. I'll do that down here at the bottom. Get down to about 5 or 6 picks. There we go. And I hit the Alt key. I think it's the same thing on a PC. It will change my cursor. You can see it over there on the left side to a bullseye target thing like you'd see in a telescopic sight. If I then click my mouse, I now have referenced this point. So I'm going to come right along that mortar line, and I'm going to pick up 2 bricks over. I do that because now my bricks will always line up. And the next thing I do is I come down to the bottom, and I'm going to increase the size of that. And you can see now I've got a big black circle there outlined. So if I click now, it's going to magically move the bricks that are to the left over to the right and copy them. If you can get rid of this guy. And I'll get rid of all of that drain pipe. I'll show you why I'm doing this in a minute. Now, where you put this cursor to select becomes a real crucial element to modifying these photographs.
Yep.
When I picked up this first one, I stayed absolutely on that same mortar line, and that allows me to make that swap. I also tend to look for the shadowing in the model. Let's come back out a second. You can see at the top up here, my bricks are really dark. So if I click now, I'm going to transfer that same darkness over to the right side where I'm copying. Here where these bricks are light, right in here, if I click there, it's going to start to change those bricks. It's going to bring those darker bricks right on over with me. If I don't want them to get darker, then I've got the line up from, let's bring a line in. I usually take a line and put it right on a mortar line. I'll click on one and then I'll click up, always doing an even number, because now I have a mortar line here and then two up. I have another mortar line, two up, I have another, and bricks are stacked. So they're not the same in every level. They're alternate. So you have to go either 2 or 4 or 6. And that will copy from down below to up above. If I wanted to do any of that, let's take this out over here. And now that you understand how to change up and down, I'm not going to do this totally across here because I just want to do this to kind of show you. Now what I'd have to do is come in here and I'd have to pick bricks probably from up above and bring them down, or pick them from over here and bring them in, so that I have the same darkness level, the same shadow level from one brick to the next. I want to maintain the look of the building. Otherwise it starts looking really weird. All right, so that's one thing that you can do. You can take things out of images and get in the way, and I'll show you an example of that in just a second. Again, we're going to get rid of this blue line. The other thing that I found I can do, and I hope that I can do it in this program the same way I did it in the other one, I'm going to take my text tool over here on the left side and put it there. That's at 40 points, and I've got it italic, I've got it bold, color's white. Let's see if it'll do it. Put in. Oh, good deal. Look at that. Oops. What happened? Why did it do that? Ay, 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 ay. Like I say, I'm learning this thing, so let's do it this way. I don't know why I'm not getting. Ay, 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 ay. I can't figure this out quick enough. I'm going to have to come back to it. Start again. I want this to go horizontal. All right, let's try it now and see what it does. Okay. Oops. There we go. Andy's. There we go. We're going to make this Andy's. I'm not done yet. We're going to put that in there. Come back. We'll put in a little more copy here.
You feel like you're being picked on, Andy? Again?
There we go. Andy's TV repair. What a deal.
Just like
He's
Big,
high-tech,
Big
you know.
Andy's weenies.
Big Andy's Wheaties on Ralph's layout. You know, you can't. One of the consequences of kind of dishing things out is you have to be able to take it in retrospect. So, yeah, on Ralph's screen, there's a Big Andy's Wheaties. That's awesome.
Oh, I like that.
Big Andy's weenies. Hot dog stand.
There you go. You're enshrined.
It's shot. I think I might have inspired him in a way that he felt a little retribution was due. But you got to be a big boy and be able to take it if you're going to dish it out like I tend to.
You got it.
So there's Andy's TV repair. Now, the other thing we can do, I hope, is if I select Andy's. Now I can do this in Photoshop, but I'm going to try here and see how this comes out. I have to look around a little bit to find something. Oh, they want me to simplify the layering. Sure enough. Saturation, that's what I want. Okay, let's try. Oh, doesn't like that. Well, I found in Photoshop that what I can do is there's an automatic handle there, and I can just adjust. Oh, here we go. Opacity, top right corner. So we're going to take that slider, and we're going to bring that down. There we go. That's coming down. And now all of a sudden, see this Andy's has changed. And now if I also magnify that, I'll give it to you almost full screen here. You can see now the brick lines are showing through. So I can take that down even a little bit more. And the further I take it down, the more of that brick is going to show through. So I can even make it look like, oh, that's good. Get the right layer, mouse. There we go. A little opacity, and that other one was down about 70 or so. Take it down there. And then we'll come out and see the whole thing. Okay. Do it one more time just so you get a better view. That's the whole building. I've squared it. I've taken the gutters out up here at the top. I put lettering on. That's mostly the things that I do with this program. The other thing I can do is if I don't like the door, I can take that out. I have actually taken automobiles that were parked in front out by simply copying bricks and dropping them down, copying the sidewalk and bringing it over and just obliterating. You can take people out, flower pots, cars, whatever you need to. The thing that you need basically to begin with, however, is a photograph of the building. And the more square on you can get, the better. You know, excuse me, I'll illustrate that. We won't save any of that. Come over here. Just got back from a trip to the Badlands, so I have a file over here called Badlands. And this is one that I just did. I'm going to open up a second photograph to show you what was done. If I can find it. Come on. There we go. Okay, so what we had here, this was the building and the photograph as it started. It's leaning back. It has North Platte across it. It's pretty whatever. Here's the same photograph after I squared it. I took my cloning tool. If you look up the left side where my X is right now, we'll go a little bit. I took this brown and just copied it down, and that covered over this north. Did the same thing, took that whole N out of this photograph. Same thing with the O, the P, and the R. The hardest thing on this to rebuild is this platform right up in here, as opposed to this platform. You can see where the T is, and we can, I can't really magnify it. I'm not in the right program. But it was really hard to trace out some of this stuff. It took a lot of time. And that's the only thing is I don't care how you do your quote unquote fine scale model building. Nothing is done in seconds. I may cheat. I may use photographs, but I don't do them in 2 seconds. That modifying that photograph right there probably took a little bit better than an hour, hour and a half. And it was pretty close to what I wanted. I haven't taken anything else or modified anything else. I have spent hours on other buildings where I've had cars in front and flower pots and everything else and modifying them to make photographic buildings for them. Now, my application of this technology and of this printing is not saying that I want these up close and personal. I don't want to compete with Nick. I don't want to compete with what Ralph is building or Andy. But it does give me a background that's absolutely vibrant, because Mother Nature has done what you see on my screen right now. It's Mother Nature's shadow lines. It's Mother Nature's weathering. I don't care if I studied for another 100 years modeling, I would have a heck of a time exactly matching what Mother Nature has done.
Yeah.
So yes, I'm cheating. I'm using what she's already done, but man, has she done a beautiful job. And this gives me a great background to put behind the models that I'm going to build that hopefully make them look even better, because I'm going to try and match her abilities Even though I may not make it 100%, I'll at least try. And I have that. I don't have something sitting back behind that detracts from what I've done in front. If that makes sense.
So Miles, that brings up a topic that Andy and I have gone back and forth on for quite a while. Backdrops.
Yes.
Paint or photo backdrops. The argument for photo is that you detract from the layout. Now, painted, it doesn't give it enough detail. So
I personally do a combination of the two.
okay.
I don't know how many viewers know it or not, but we actually, between John Lawrence, my best friend, and I, John's actually the one that conceived this, but he came up with the idea of frisket masks, and we sell the cloud stencils for painting backgrounds. We also have stencils for painting mountains and cities and all kinds of things, into the background. And granted, they are not Rembrandt. In the first place, our concept is that we don't want them to be Rembrandt. We want them to look natural and kind of go out of your mind.
Right.
It's, I mean, you can get them, yes, so detailed that it detracts. And people, as John says in the clinics when we do them, would you move those models out of the way so I can look at your background? You don't really want a professional painter. And he jokes also about this, but it's a point well taken. I don't necessarily want my wife. I'm now on my fourth. If my first one had painted my background, how am I ever going to get her to come back and repaint? I guarantee you she will not. And by the same token, if I put a photograph up there that's been printed out that costs several $100s, and my plumber says, I got to cut a hole in that wall because I got to get at that pipe, I can't say it on air, but, I'm messed up. So, I don't really like the photographs. I really don't like get a professional to come in and paint your background, because how are you going to get that professional back in again later on? So I like the idea that you're going to paint the background. The trick is to make it look real enough. And I think our stencils give you a very realistic cloud. If I then put relief models in front of that, which is what I call these photographic models, if I come in like I'm going to do on the Kansas City Southern building and set it out just a little bit so it has an inch or two space and you can't see the top of it, then that gives me an undulation on the background buildings so they don't look flats.
Right.
I'm going to do everything I can. I'm going to use my fine scale, hopefully, skills to enhance that background and make it look much more real. But I think a combination of painting and these photorealistic background buildings, plus what I'm going to do in front, hopefully will give an image that's, believable, because that's all we're after. Disney said it, it's illusion. We're not trying to make the real world. I can't put the Kansas City stockyards in my entire basement of my entire house. It's in full scale. It's much bigger. Be lucky probably if I could fit it in an N scale, let alone O scale. So there's no way that I'm going to exactly model the real in my model railroad, but I do want to make it look believable. I want the illusion that you're in Kansas City.
So you can capture the sensation that someone gets. That's the argument that me and Ralph have had about capturing this sensation that you're putting the person there. And
Yes.
Not all. I've seen great painted backdrops that are absolutely exceptional, but I've seen a lot to the contrary. And they detract from good modeling if good modeling is in the foreground and you have, less than perfect. If you have the kind of backdrops that I personally would paint behind any quality model, it's going to detract from that illusion. So since this is a real good time, actually, we've got a few questions I want to get to in the Q&A here in a second, but this is a good time if you got a second, Nick, if you would, while we're talking for a second, if you would care to show a couple of pictures of your layouts since they have photo backdrops. Let me try to pull you in to reinforce my argument if you don't mind. Because I am a believer in photo backdrops. I think you buy a sense of depth that is very hard to achieve elsewhere, but it also depends on what you're doing. If you're modeling the flatlands of Kansas and the open rural scenery, you could paint a few trees on and basically disappear those behind some modeled trees from super trees or whatever. You could use a couple photos in the backdrop. And you guys, while we're kind of discussing this, take a look at these couple pictures he's going to share with us of his photo backdrops. Look at the depth that you get. And in my case, much like Nick's case on his layout, I need these very tall mountains, and they are prominent in view. And my painting skills are just not up to the task of making you see the tens of thousands of trees and the miles of depth that you can accomplish with the photos.
Well, but there's also a little bit of artistic talent there. If you look at his photo background and you look at his foreground, he's picked up the color palette from the photograph and transferred that to the railroad.
Yep.
It makes that transition between the background and the railroad very hard to see. The other thing is, John always says you never want to let him see that gap between the real scenery and the background. And he's got tree lines up there. He's got all kinds of things to hide that transition, so you don't see it and it becomes believable.
Absolutely. And Sparky's 107 talking in the chat about this too. And it's the argument that to some degree Ralph has too, is that we don't want Sparky's argument is we want people to look at our layouts, not our backdrops. But you don't want people looking at your layout and looking away from your backdrop because the backdrops are so horrible that nobody wants to look at it, or what have you. Whatever they are, they need to be on par with your modeling. I'm a believer in consistency. So if you put a $500 or a $400 South River Model Works incredible structure built to the T's that you spent a year finely detailing, and then you use a bunch of Plasticville structures down the line from it, that inconsistency is going to be much more drastic than if you just built a bunch of Walther's cornerstone structures. Your layout would be more believable in Miles' terminology, and it would bring the illusion home better if you had more consistency. So if you are going to take a piece of plywood and put some a piece of roll lifelike grass mats like we used to buy back in the day that were basically sawdust glued to paper, and you're going to roll that out on a sheet of plywood and shove that up against a wall against a photo backdrop, that's not going to work for you. Likewise, the exact opposite happens, and I've even looked at some of the best painted backdrops that I've seen, and there's some really good ones out there, like Lex Parker. You know, everybody in the community ought to know about him. Go look up Lex Parker's YouTube channel. He is a first-class modeler, and he has painted backdrops that are on par with. Look at that, the depth of that scene that you get, even with the aisles and everything that you see there. The depth that you see in those shelves. Lex Parker painted his backdrops, and they're exceptional. They're on par with any couple $100 picture you would buy and hang behind your couch. But most people's painted backdrops are not that adequate. And it's going to be very, very difficult to paint anything like structures that look anything like a square box painted on there versus what a photo could do for you. So, and especially if you do some of this stuff like Miles is doing. So to bring this back to a couple questions that we've got in the chat about this, those printed structures, or from paper to that new material that Miles is working with for his structure, that's a photo printed structure on your layout. So that brick is literally photorealistic. In the correct use of the word literally, so Dwight doesn't get on to me and bring up the Oxford Dictionary again. It's photorealistic in every way. Don't you want your backdrops to stand that testament, that challenge as well? Or like Nick's structures that we look at, this brick is exceptionally detailed. I mean, it's photorealistic at a close level and three-dimensional. Don't you want your backdrops to be able to hold up to that challenge? So let me ask that question since we're talking about photos. The end result, Sparky asked about the output of that printing that you've got, Miles. When you print that off, he says, but when you print it off, does it look the same, or do you use that as a reference? But that's your end result, right? That you take that photo that you're printed out, wrap that around a foam core or a wood substructure to be the building, right?
Yeah, yes. Since it's printing on Sentry, it already has a good deal of stiffness to it. But I will put, I'll put gator foam or something when I need to relieve it out from the wall. Some friend I've talked about this. I think some of them, the ones that go directly against the wall, I'm just going to Velcro them at a standard height, say 12 and 24 inches, and I can Velcro it on. Then if I need to take it off to clean the wall or something else, I can just peel them off or reposition whatever, as long as I have standards around. But some of them I will put an extra buildup of gator board or something else on it to stiffen it and set it out so it does have some relief from the wall. But yes, what I'm printing is a finished product after I get done cutting on it. These buildings that I'm going to pick up tomorrow, there's 6 or 7 of them, they have excess around them, just like that grain elevator that I just showed you. And I'm going to come in with the bandsaw and trim them fairly close. Then I'll come in and I'll sand those back. And then I found that Sentra accepts magic marker very well. So I'll take some of my Pantone markers, either in a brick color or concrete or whatever matches, the edge material, and I will color out that edge so it doesn't look white. And they're taller than the person that's viewing them, so I don't have to worry too much about the top. I'm going to put a fence or something between the track and the building at the bottom, which will hide the gap between the railroad and the background. I think Bob, why did I lose it? The editor of the Gazette, Bob Brown, uses fences extensively to hide that gap between the railroad and the background. I think it's a fantastic technique, especially in the big city where you have fences everywhere. So I'll use the fence probably in front of that building and hide that gap so I don't have to worry about it.
Sure.
But yeah. Yes, what I'm printing is, in a sense, a finished piece, with the exception of the full-size KC Southern building that I showed in the last show, where I'm actually going in and cutting out the windows. Then I'm taking my Cricut and I'm cutting out the actual window itself. I guess you'd call it the mullions, the frame of the window. And then what else was I doing that? I think I was cutting out the back piece, the clear plastic that I put behind that. And then I'm putting a frosting back behind that. Some of them I'll put scenes behind, printed scenes. Some of them I won't. I showed you earlier before everybody came on, I've gone to the top of the building and I've 3D printed my corbels, the trim at the top. And I made the mold out of this was the Masters. One of them I broke off, but at any rate, I have 18 of those in the mold. And then these are the castings. Then let's turn it over the right way. They're going to hang that way up there, and those will be at the top, about 500 of them. So I've got to cast this 18 up mold a whole bunch of times. One reason why I'm doing it in plaster, not in urethane, because the urethane would degrade too fast on the mold. The plaster, I could probably do 100 castings, and the mold will still be good. So I'll cast those out plaster and glue those in place. And a lot of the rest of the cornice material will actually be made out of wood that's then painted, sanded, and smoothed out, so that you can't tell it's wood. Everything has to look like concrete.
Well, plaster does a really good job of recreating concrete for a couple other reasons too, because you get some of the chipping and edge details that are harder to pull apart in urethane. I mean, even wood's pretty good for simulating concrete because of what you could do to it. I'll find them while we're talking, but I took the stamps and some of the platforms that come with the kit I'm working on. I took a wire brush to them to put an edge on them and to make those, quite rough and to damage that concrete because, each structure's been around for a while. Concrete does great on a big open flat surface to a degree, but the edges of concrete get damaged quite a bit. Even if they're 18 stories up on the front of a building, wind is just as brutally damaging to concrete as water or wind is to rock to carve out the Grand Canyon. It is wearing that down, and you need to model that if you expect that the structure to be there a while. How about getting a finish on it? Are you printing? Would you print that on a matte finish paper, or would dull coating that work okay? Or
The Sentra we talked about last time. At the Sentra, when I did the tests on that, you can spray that with Krylon dull coating spray, testers, dull coat. I sprayed pure lacquer on it. I tried everything. I scrubbed it with water. Nothing takes that printing. It's a UV ink. Nothing takes that ink off of that Sentra. It's absolutely phenomenal for its wearability. So on the Sentra, I don't have to worry about it at all. If I were printing on paper, which was what I originally planned on doing, I was really wondering, how am I going to set that building in the layout as a three-dimensional model? Because if I take scenic cement and start spreading it around there, it's going to ruin that brick detail or the concrete detail or whatever's at the bottom. But with UV inks, that's not a concern. It's color fast. It'll take anything, scenic cement, whatever I've tried on it. So they're pretty color stabilized. And I'm not going to worry about whatever treatments I have. I can actually plant the buildings and not have to worry about it. If you're going to do what I'm doing with the Sentra, and I think I gave a reference on the show last time, where to go to get it printed. Tom, my buddy here in Kansas City, will print and ship to anybody anywhere. But nonetheless, the one thing I did have to do to make this work, in my opinion anyway, I'm hoping you can see this, it's cut at a 45-degree angle. I did go out, I spent the $40 and I bought a really high quality mat cutter, just like you would cut mats for picture frames. And I've got a clamp down on my desk downstairs that will clamp this down across here with a board, several clamps. And when I run that on, I get an absolutely perfectly straight edge on there that I can then 45 these bricks together with. And it glues really well with ACC. You could use epoxy if you're brave enough to use that. I think it gets all over everything. Or you could use the PVC glue. Since this is PVC, PVC glue will glue it. Again, the smell and the messiness of the PVC, I would rather use the crazy glue and run it up the backside gap like we normally would. And I think you'd have much better luck with it. But I purposely tried to get away from the paper. And as soon as Tom showed me what he could print on with I went to him with all the files saying I want to print on some kind of matte paper. And he showed me the Sentra and I said, wow, let's try it and see. And the result was just phenomenal. I did a clinic in Louisville, as you know, almost a month ago now at their convention, and everybody there was just going crazy with the look of this stuff. But anyway.
I can't believe I missed that one, but I've been so busy here lately that. But I took these wood components that come with the Nix kit, the Magic that laser art, and actually, its instructions actually tell you some of this stuff too. Actually, probably all of these details, but to nick the corners and stuff of the wood, which it's hard to see. I also dusted it, so I use a technique making concrete, especially on smooth surfaces, where I dust it with talcum powder as I'm painting it and do two coats. If I want a really rough surface, like I use some, it's going to sound like an awful cheat to use my terminology, but I use some computer keyboard keys. I am a computer geek, so old fashioned PC 105 keyboards, big old fat keys, made pretty good concrete bases for bridge abutments or for bridges. I'm using it for signal towers. So you use those big, large keys that are down here on the bottom part of the keyboard, like the lower shift keys and such. Keep in mind they're not angled correctly on every side. But I took that key and they have an arc to them, so I filed it flat and then painted it with an oil spray paint and then dusted it with talcum powder. For that, I used a fairly heavy or liberal talcum powder, but for these things, I'll use a fairly fine coat, so you get a fairly fine, meticulous detail. And then I damaged that, but I can't get close to the focus. But I took a wire brush to it and tore those edges up pretty good, so they look like they've been kicked for 50 years, which is exactly what needs to happen. Or that everybody who's moved out of this or drug a piece of equipment out of here has drug it down the stairs, and you've got to recreate that. Weathering is a term that is often used for this stuff, but there's also an element of human wear and tear, the effect of humans on nature, that we've got pretty good at doing what nature does to humans in our modeling. Some, guys like Ralph here have somewhat perfected the effect of nature on man's impact on the planet, the effects of rust and grease and grime, et cetera, et cetera. But most of the models of the railroads, even dioramas that I see, are just a lot cleaner than I expect. Everywhere I go in the world that humans have been, they leave a lot of mess. So I expect to print a lot of, newspapers and stuff and throw them on the ground on my layout, a lot of dirt and a lot of damage from that. So to get that effect. By the way, while I got camera, I'm working with these doors. I've looked at some pictures and I'm going to share this picture I found. To try to figure out exactly how these doors should be assembled. And me and Ralph actually, in mine and Ralph's style, we debated this a little. It's not entirely uncommon for me and Ralph to debate things.
Yeah, totally.
So
Can
I
imagine
don't know whether you can see the doors on mine. What I did is I took the thickness of the door
yeah,
and I put spacers. I put one at each end of the rail and one in the middle.
that's what I was thinking
So,
about doing
so
too.
that how can I show you?
So you lifted the track off the wall surface.
That's
Yeah.
what I was thinking about. Oh yeah, there you are.
I can go right through. It's free and clear.
That was my initial impulse, was to do that.
Yeah,
It
nice
was the
job.
only way I could get it to work with the hardware that's on the door
Right.
and not destroy the hardware on the door.
Well, now there's two ways that door could work. So it has a bolt where there's obviously a wheel. That wheel could either be on the front side of that assembly, and it could hang behind this bracket, or it could set on top of it and set down on the front of it. Of course, my concern was, well, that anybody breaking in could just come grab that door and just pick it up off there.
Yeah.
So I am thinking, and I'm glad you're saying that, because I need to pick this up before any glue sets up on me. I think I may do that spacer business too, and just clean this up a little bit under because I just glued that down, because I've thought about this for several days. But my biggest reason I decided to do it that way is that I was thinking I've got some small beads that I'm going to use as insulators on power poles. I've used, these are much larger. These are way too large. But, our good friend here in the community, Curtis, found some that are about half this size. They are incredibly small. Um,
Are they the ones that I told you about? Those ones?
these are, and these are great. They looked really good. I was quite happy with them for a while. And when I put these on, I actually drilled holes in my cross shaft and put a needle up through.
Yeah.
And then bead down on it with contact cement and cut the needles off and everything. So they're actually setting up on pins just like they would be on the prototype. I've got beads that are half that size. I mean, they are unbelievably small. I just can't find them right this second. I mean, there's a little sack of them that's about that big, has like 500 in it. It's unbelievable how small these things are.
Yeah, but in real life, those things are almost at the base are almost 6 inches in diameter.
Yeah, I think me and you found that they're like 4 3/4 at the back, at 4 3/4 to like 5.5 as they flare out or something like that. We looked that up, but these are, well, that's getting off topic. We'll debate that, because I look forward to that. But I was thinking about taking those beads, those really small ones, because they're quite small, and hanging those beads as the wheels. They're a perfect wheel assembly. So I could take those, but my fear was, if the door is behind that rail and I put those beads on the front, it may not be as believable when you can see that wheel as the bead. So maybe I ought to do that instead by taking a pin and gluing a pin in there to simulate that wheel. Either that, or I'll take or those beads might work too, and just put that bead there. Whereas on the other hand, if I put the door on the front of this assembly, then I could put that bead back there behind it. And what little you saw that bead the illusion would not be destroyed in Miles's parlance.
Well, but you also have to take into consideration that you've got to allow that roller and the beads to work so that you can roll that door back and forth.
Well, okay, I'm not hardly going to get that far. I know but I was thinking that with what I'm doing here, especially if I set them on the front, which was part of the reason I decided to do that. If I did set them on the front, I could just set the doors there. They wouldn't be, they're not going to survive an earthquake. And you know how bad earthquakes are in central Kentucky, but they would sit there.
They wouldn't be flush with the wall, though.
That's right. The door's not going to be flush with the
Bottom
wall.
would
Remember, I
touch.
got glass on this too. Now that glass thickness is only a few thousandths, but
Paper thin.
yeah, it's incredibly thin. But
And you're using real glass, right? Or
yeah, that's got the real glass in it.
Yeah, as I watch you guys do that, I'm thinking, I'm sketching on my my clipboard here too. And the intent that I had in design was the door would lay flush on the wall surface.
Yeah.
And I was just trying to provide the illusion of a track. But I like what Ralph did in lifting the track off. And then to your point, Andy, I don't know if I could make it this small, but if I were able to laser cut a wheel that you would glue down on, kind of lay on top of the track above the door hanger to look like a wheel riding on that would probably be the ultimate. But
that's right. Floating it up there is the no-brainer thing. I'm convinced that that's the right way to do it.
I like that idea, Ralph.
Yeah, floating it up there and let the stop, and turning the stops up, so let it hang like that. That's the right way to do that. So I need to make some spacers up. And then the question is to get that wheel. And then there's no reason that door can't slide in there either. I mean, it's not going to slide awesomely, but it doesn't matter. But if I ever, if you ever changed if I ever changed my layout around a little or had an op station that was in the middle of the night, I could close the doors up.
Yeah. Interesting idea. Yeah, the window glass would be your only challenge to get around that thickness.
And it's pretty thin. It's 7/1000 of an inch. No, I'm sorry, 3/1000 of an inch. So it's
okay.
If you're gonna let it slide, Andy, if at some point you're gonna be able to move it back and forth, I would put a track along the bottom somehow.
Yeah, well, so you've got
just so that it rests on it, and it can be painted the same as the lower section. Just so that the door sits on it, because when it gets to the loading dock, it's already sitting on the bumper.
That's right. So this should have a track out here too. Should I pull that bumper up and put an entire piece, the entire length across, like?
I wouldn't. Oh, I guess you can.
Okay, so what you're saying is that you need to come in here with a couple pieces over here on the side that are thinner than that bumper, but that represent a stock of some kind that's there to give that door a rest. Well, but on the prototype, that door is a hanging door. It shouldn't have to be supported.
No, but if you want to make that a door that's going to go back and forth, you want to put as little stress on those door parts as possible, including the track.
Yeah. Okay, well, floating it out there is kind of a no-brainer. So did you put your doors on and then set your track on, or did you slide the doors up?
I glued my doors on first.
All right, I got to work through this for a minute and try to figure out exactly what I want to do with that.
Nick, I absolutely love the interiors for the dock.
Oh, wonderful. Good stuff, Ralph. They fit okay for you?
Oh, absolutely.
Excellent.
I even did the floor a little bit. I don't know whether you can see it, with some hunter line to make stains.
Yeah, I see it. Yeah. Well done. And you got lights in there too?
Pardon?
You got lights in as well?
Oh, yeah.
Right on.
Well, we had this conversation.
To divide it.
Yep.
Go ahead.
Yeah, we had this conversation a couple of years ago. We were talking about lighting structures and how to do that. And I've got several structures where I built interior wall sections or cardboard or whatever. And we some time ago talked about having these little shadow boxes just inside the windows that you want interiors on. Put actually Miles did a show for Traymester TV, I'm pretty sure, where he had done photos in the back and put a little stuff in front, so you had some 3D. What that was that Traymasters you did that for?
I think so. I can't remember.
It,
Either that or the YouTube channel.
Yeah, yeah, or it was your university, but that was just such a good idea to do that. And then when Nick was showing us these kits that are essentially shadow box, I see, great minds think alike, or either that or all crazy people kind of think alike too. But you see that little kit he's got, so it's a shadow box as a small kit with all the with all the crates of detail parts. I mean, it's an incredibly easy, but also quite cost-effective way to get interiors in your structures. So, without
Yep.
building a lot of interior structure.
Like I was going to build a box anyway, and then you told me that Nick had these things, and
There you go. Saved you the trouble, Ralph.
you absolutely did.
Yeah,
If
we've been
somebody
talking
else-
about shadow boxing this for a while, but no manufacturer makes that. And there's not even a lot of people who are making interior, much of anything. You've got a few things from like Knock or Bush that are some European interior components, and then thankfully we have Shapeways. So if you want interior detail parts, you could spend a lifetime and a lifetime's worth of income buying stuff from Shapeways. But
Yeah.
and then bathtubs and toilets, water closets. What's that, Miles?
As my old friend said, if somebody else makes it, don't waste your time duplicating it.
That's right.
Yes, and that's part of the discussion. I'm writing that. That's I am unabashedly stealing some of those concepts for my article for the EMAG that's upcoming. It's an argument of whether to build it or whether to buy it, DIY versus DIY. And that it's sometimes that's a really hard challenge, and it's not as simple as if they sometimes it's not as simple as if they make it. For example, they make great DCC systems, but I built my own. But my own DCC system costs $15 and does 3 times as much, versus buying one that would have cost me $2,000 and doesn't do as much. So,
But then
it's a hard balance sometimes.
you are the type, regardless whether somebody makes it, you also have to make it.
Well, I buy too. I buy kits. I don't scratch build everything. I buy a lot of kits, and I start with other people's work, especially people's work that I am picky. So if I'm not satisfied with the quality of what I'm getting, then I will just do it entirely from scratch. But if I can find good
picky?
quality, slightly, but I go after it genuinely. I'm not just a picky armchair modeler. I really genuinely try to get the results that I acclaim to. I don't always succeed, or even if I do succeed, it's after 7 failures. But I do want things, I do want a pretty, pretty impressive result. I'm gonna build some spacers for these so I can try to mount these door hinges. So this is not that interesting to look at. This would be a pretty good time if you could show us some. I think you might have the best pictures in the group, Nick. So if you could pull us up some pics and kind of tell us what we're looking at for some of them. I know some of those. I know you're going to get more of my money anyway. I basically already decided that, so I don't think the pictures are going to hurt either way.
Well, let me start with a couple things in the background behind me here, and I'll start first back to Ralph and the good question you had on those finger joints. So Ralph, you may see the finger joints come back, but in a small model.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys can see that. Am I too close to the camera?
Oh, that's
No, you're good.
Okay. So this is going to be a little kit that I'm going to launch, and really it's intended to be like the elevator house on the roof of a larger building.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's got those little finger joints, and it just so happens that one of the lasers that I have does a phenomenal job of cutting this material out, much more precise than the other laser that I use. So what I'm noticing is I'm getting a better result and less burn off of this one particular laser. So I'm probably gonna go forward with a little kit like that. Again, thinking about the efficiency in the cut, right? But just let me show you a couple things from background here, Miles. This is for you, Miles. You know
love
that
it.
scale. We got O
O
scale.
scale? Is that O scale?
That's O scale.
Fantastic.
And you like fire escapes?
Fire escape.
Hey,
Hey,
too
we
cool.
got some fire escape as well. So have a look. I don't know if you can see that chimney detail or not either. It's hard to see from here.
No, I
Multi-layer.
can see it. It's beautiful.
Yeah, I'm still working on a water tank for the roof of this thing, but I just haven't got that far yet. But you can see some of the cornice detail here too. Not as nice as what you're going to do with your 3D and your castings. This is actually a photograph that I brought into CorelDRAW and etched into the wood to get
Cool.
so you kind of get from a reasonable distance, you get the feel of a cast concrete cornice.
All right, let me ask you to do the same thing that I just asked Wooden Scenes to do. Make the back.
Make the back of the building?
Yes,
The back
because
of the cornice.
that's what we see from the railroad.
Okay.
Okay. I've tried to get Woody to change Wooden Scenes, to change their viewpoint, because they're putting out all these city buildings.
Yeah.
To walk down the street. We don't put streets normally on our layout. Maybe as an accent someplace, but we want buildings that service the trains or that accentuate the trains or accessorize the trains. That means building backs, buildings with docks, etc. So if you made that only as thick as that, if you cut that window just at the back window, the side window there, you got two windows on the side, cut it right so that window's there. So it's got about 2 inches of relief.
Yep.
With the background then of that fire escape, and I could put two of those together and get a big building, across or whatever. I mean, hey, fantastic.
Hey, guess what? I've already got it in design.
Good. And the other thing is that Earl Smallshaw building is absolutely phenomenal. Wooden Scenes or Walther still makes it. It's the tenement where there's a building that's out and a building's out and part of it's back in and the fire escape is in the inset.
In between, yep.
Oh, marvelous, because it's got that undulation, it's got the detail, it's got chunkies and pricklies. I mean, Earl was a genius at making that building. It's fantastic.
Yep, neat stuff. But we got a little bit of the cityscape and a little bit of the alleyway. I don't have my Cooper's Alley kit here available to me at the moment, but that's exactly what we were intending to do with this.
Yes, where it undulates,
right? So to our tagline, right, where the city meets the railway is our company tag.
Hold it up. We can't see it because there you go.
There we go. So sorry about that. So basically, where the city meets the railway is the tagline of the company. So that's exactly the vision that we want too. That whole dirty, gritty, old building kind of scenario, right? And this could be the 20s, this could be the 60s or 70s, depending on how you want to paint and decorate that, right? So
I have to be real careful because I'm married to a master model railroader, but Fran loves to ride the trains because you get to see things that you can't see any other way.
Yes.
From cars or anything else, because the trains are going through the back alleys and the junkyard backside and the building backsides. I mean, that's what we need.
That's the good stuff. Now I got to do this. I got to do this for Andy. So this may not be the back alley, but this is kind of like the gritty downtown, right?
Oh, neat.
So this is one for Andy.
I'm really in love with that structure. I have to invent a place to put that structure on my layout. I'm just there's these things that catch us that whether it fits the prototype for my area or not, so what? Let's just say somebody built that sucker in 1940. I don't care. It's such an incredible structure.
Thanks.
Andy, it's on special this weekend, $29.95, only 5 payments, and he'll double your order if you order in the next 2 seconds.
Two of them would. That's a big kit. Any way you go about it, it's going to be perfect for the. I'm going to put it in the town. Even though it's slightly higher than the buildings that were there, I'm in love with that structure.
I've actually sold 2, and a gentleman put them back to back, built two halves back to back. So kind of neat. So anyway, let's. I could flip into some of the photographs, but one of the other things that Andy and I were chatting about earlier was with respect to lighting and what lighting can do and bring to your model, right? So let me just throw on a couple for conversation here. In a moment.
That's a personal fascination about anyway, is bringing a layout to life. And light's one of the easiest way. Be it Nick, we're talking about that. Be it Miles, be it Ralph, we've all talked about that. The life you could get on a layout by putting some light there.
Yep, ambient light, wonderful stuff.
Yeah, just a little bit of accent here and there. I know these are too hot; they're too bright, but that was just me experimenting with some of the Woodland Scenics just plug lighting. But
Yeah,
there's
just turn the dimmer down.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So just playing with a bit of the lighting in my photography and that, but you can see the little red flashing light on. I know it's a bit extreme, but my wife Renee liked that effect.
Yeah,
You can,
that's animation. It's great.
yeah, it's just a little bit of this and that, but as you zoom in on some of these, angles and images, and you can just you can kind of envision yourself walking down that street, or looking over your shoulder, so to speak.
Down the
Yeah,
CD.
not unless I've got my 45 with me, but other than that,
Yeah.
I don't own a 45.
Town Toronto, or yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of that's kind of a neat angle that we don't necessarily spend too much time on, but I'm trying to go that direction now with some of the just plug lighting, just as an easy way for a customer to add that kind of feature. I'm having a lot of fun with it on my layout right now as well. So there's the interior, a little bit of that prototype interior dock stuff, Ralph. Not quite the one that, not as nice as the one you have there.
Yeah.
You did a great job painting that, by the way.
Thank you.
Flip up.
Well, like the newspapers too that you had sitting on top of the trash cans. Those things that make it look like humans made the typical base that humans make in the world. That's a good effect.
That's what it's all about, right? That's what sets things apart. A little bit of, a little bit of weed growing through here and there, signage, staining, all that good stuff. And my credit goes to Dave Ross again. He's the painter in this model, and fantastic job. Look at some of the brickwork he's picked out here. Again, acrylic washes. So, one of the things that I struggled with when I looked at buying this company and taking it forward was, how do I paint this stuff? And I grew up with the plastic models just like everybody else did, and I was just kind of taken aback and wondered, how would I do this? And as I've learned, and as I've watched Dave with his skill and ability, and some of the ease at which you can do this, it's impressive. It's amazing. Pick a little bit of the brick out here and there, like you did, Ralph, with a pencil. This is done with paint, but either way is very, very plausible, right?
Yep.
Filling in a little bit of the mortar, and this is really just acrylic. Seal it with a clear mat. Go back and wash again. If you don't like that, seal it. Go back again. You can do that forever, and build up your depth of layering. Right. I think that's really what the challenge is, and the effect that you get is obvious. Miles, what do you think, Miles, in terms of layering technique?
For the painting?
Yeah, are you one that does a bit of that?
Yes. I think it's real hard to get things 100% on the money the first time. And the other thing is, to me, paint has thickness, and the eye, especially when it's looking through a camera, when you look at a photograph, you can tell if that thing has 2 layers or 3 layers or 4 layers of paint. There actually is a difference in the texture, the way it goes on.
Yeah.
Actually, Miles, when I do the weathering on my locomotives and rail cars and stuff, before I'm finished, when I figure I'm finished, I take photographs of it outside.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
If there's any spots that I've missed, the camera picks it up. Your eye doesn't.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's a better eye than you can have even under a magnifier.
Yep.
For for sure.
It's a stupid illustration, but it's absolutely perfect. My wife and I go out to pull weeds in the backyard in the live steam railroad. And I will go along and I'll think that I have cleaned out an entire section. She comes along behind me and she fills the whole bag, because the mind tends to not see things after a while. You're looking for things and you're looking right at it and you don't see it. So yes, the camera is a marvelous tool because it brings the focus in and it captures it and you can't wipe it out. It's there to see or not see.
Yeah, very true.
I like that sign on that building.
Like Cooper Manufacturing?
Yeah.
Yep. That's kind of that's another one of those challenges, Ralph. You know, I thought we could pull something off. It was raised letter.
Mhm.
You could even have cut these little nibs out after it's been glued on the building too, and make that all disappear as well. This was a prototype for the interiors. This kit comes with the interior, and then that's what kind of gave me the shadow box idea too.
Right.
That's because they really are just a shadow box inside those buildings. Some of the vent stacks, some of our tanks. As an example, some of the entry doorway. This is that Cooper's Alley building. You know, Miles, to your point about the back alley. So there's the alley, there's the track running
Yes.
through, and you know that.
Inset doorway, fantastic. The basement windows, it's great.
Yeah. There it is there.
And the rooftop water tanks, almost every building, before 1980 had a water tank on top of it. Every
Absolutely.
building.
Yep, absolutely. Had to have it, right? Code.
That's right.
Even in small towns. I mean, this small town that I'm modeling, I got pictures from it from back in that era. And there's probably 50 small town structures. And if there's not 45 water tanks, there's not one.
That's right.
Even on these little small 2-story, mom and pop little businesses, there's a tank up there.
Yep.
I hate to say it, but it's my usual cutout time. Nick, it has nothing to do with you. The guys will tell you I just kind of fade about 9:30.
It's okay, no problem. It's okay. It's 10:30 here, Miles.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
I'd be dead if I was on the East Coast. Anyway,
take care.
y'all take care.
See you,
Yeah.
buddy.
Take care. So there's that interior shadow box we were talking about.
Yeah. I haven't put my skids in yet.
Oh no?
No. I was actually going to try and see if I could fit a tow motor in there, or at least the front end of it.
And I put a few on the bottom of some of mine, not all of them. It depends on how I'm going to use them. But so this is kind of a neat thing that Nick provides with him is he has this little jig that has some of the components already, laser cut into it. You cut them out once you glue the cross components on, and you end up with these little pallets, which you could buy plastic or white metal from anybody else. But anybody who works with wood will tell you if it's made from wood in the real world, it's better to model it in wood. So these pallets just so you get these pallets that look like this, and I took some of mine and flipped them over and put a couple cross braces on them, like I see on some of the pallets I have around too. So depending on where I want to use them, but it's got a neat little jig. I don't call it a jig, but a little plate that comes with these on it.
Yep. Yep.
So Nick, do you remember a while back I asked you to make some letters for me?
Yes.
Take a look at my screen.
All right. 40 Creek. A good whiskey and a good railway.
Yep.
Oh, that's good. That looks awesome. I love the metal look, the steel look.
My plate girder, everything. I've got an 8-foot bridge right there, so it's got to be finished yet. But that was all your work.
Oh, that's awesome. Great to see it in use. That's well done. All right. Andy, how you making out there?
I like that one.
Yeah, I think I figured out how to do it, but I've got to cut these little spacers, and I'm going to do it the way with the spacers, and I'm going to come back and I'm going to leave the doors in. That's my only thing. I'm just going to let them float in there for now. And I'm going to come back and glue those beads on. I'm worried about the beads gluing to the track, but I think I'll get away with that. My only thing is where I painted these, they're wood and they tend to warp a little. So I think I'm going to have a support in the middle to pull that warpage back down a touch.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have that on display at Guelph?
Yes, I did. This one isn't out yet on the market.
That's nice.
That high. How much space did you put, Ralph?
The material that the rail was etched out of or
Yep.
lasered out of, I cut some pieces of that, which basically were the same thickness as the door. And that's what I used as standoffs.
Yeah. I'm going to have to work with this a little more before I could get that spacing right. I got to find those beads anyway, but I don't need to. I can put the doors in before I put beads on it. I got the one last comment. We'll talk about lighting because I've got to light this before we do the next show and put my basic interior in so we can talk about some of the lighting because I use these little 0402 lights for everything basically. One, because you can buy them so doggone cheap. They are quite small, but they put out more light than I want. I have to dim them anyway. But I mean, these things are doggone near microscopic.
They're size of the head of a straight pin.
Sure. I mean, I've got some 0603s and some others, but these are just incredibly small. But they work really well in a bunch of applications. So I use those 3D printed globes, like I showed those on the kit that we completed a couple months ago. For the interior, I use those as in the globes. I use them for a lot of other things. You do need to position the solder point to the back so that because they project light out one side, so you can mount them correctly. So I'll be installing my shadow boxing assembly and my roof structure prior to next show, and we'll talk more about chaseways for cabling and putting light into the structure, how to hide some of that stuff, how to get some light and control of light, because I use light in my structures much like I do trees and such on my layout to control where a user views things from, so you get these viewing angles. Light kind of reinforces that as well. So since we're getting close to the end of this, I'm really so I've got I'll drop a link on there too, but itlascalemodels.com. That's itlascalemodels.com. Imagine that laser art. That's Nick's company. I'm quite fond of them. I've talked about them on a couple of shows now because I've been building this structure, but I tend to do that when I find some products that I really believe in, and I'm really quite impressed with what you're doing over there, Nick, and your approach to it in general. And any of us small business and people who do the hobby justice by providing a kind of product like you do that's quite unique. And I know me and Ralph have talked about what you're doing a little bit too, and I really appreciate you coming on and kind of sharing some of the thoughts and insights. We can't ever get everybody up to speed or tell them all your secrets in a 2-hour show while we do anything else. But so I encourage you, everybody else to reach out to Nick, take a look at some of the stuff that he's got on his site, some of the custom stuff that he's showing off as well. So I'm gonna take him up on some offer to do a little custom work. A couple things that I need, like everybody saying in the chat, and give me a hard time for being picky. There are a few things I need that just aren't out there, and so I'll reach out on those things. So thanks so much, Nick, for coming on with us and hanging with us for a little while tonight.
Hey, my pleasure very much. Thanks for having me, guys. It was a pleasure.
You're welcome. I'm glad you joined in.
Happy to be. You might find me back again. You never know.
Oh yeah, we're gonna bring you back. What scales are your products in right now?
Primarily an HO scale right now. I got a little bit of N and I got a little bit of O. I kind of walked away from S scale a bit just because there's not much of a market there for us anymore. But Mostly HO at the moment.
Yeah.
Plus you do, when time permits, custom work too, right?
When time permits, it does take a lot of your precious time away, unfortunately. So it's a tough one. I'll do it if the customer has prepared some drawings, especially. That's an easier way to get things done. But yeah, always up for an opportunity and a challenge.
Good stuff.
Well, thanks everybody for coming and joining us for tonight's show. We'll be back in roughly a month. Barry will be back from his little foray. Thanks everybody for joining us, and we'll call this one a wrap.
All right.
Thanks, Andy.
Now,
All right. So everybody go to YouTubemodelbuilders.com. There. Excuse me. There you'll find the schedules for the Tuesday and Wednesday show. Those shows are at 8 o'clock Central, 9 o'clock Eastern Time. The Thursday and the Saturday live show, once a month live show, is 9 o'clock Central, 10 o'clock Eastern Time. And also while you're at the website, be sure and click on the eMag and sign up for email notification when the magazine comes out. JD and his crew do a fantastic job on it. And they've also made sure that they're keeping it free of ads and a free publication. So you definitely want to check it out. They have some really great articles in there. Also, we've got the live show coming up this Saturday. That'll be at 9 o'clock Central, 10 o'clock Eastern Time. I'll be ITing the show because Barry's off this month. Big Bill will be the host, and he's got a very interesting guest on the show with him this month. I know everybody will be interested in seeing who it is and listening to what he has to say. So be sure and tune in on that. And also, if you couldn't watch the shows live, we do record these. They're on our YouTube channel under YouTube Model Builders. And all you got to do is go there, pick out the playlist for the show you want, and make it easier to find. I want to say thank you to everybody in the chat. Thank you, Andy, Nick, Ralph, Miles, for putting on a good show tonight. And we shall see y'all this Saturday night. Have a good week. Goodbye.